Ask the Mayor with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. So we talk about city business on what's been kind of a back and forth week on temperatures. We were lamenting the fact that we would prefer something a little bit more consistent.
Absolutely, and more consistent to the warm side.
Yeah. Kind of inching its way upward.
Yeah, I think it will. The next couple of weeks look pretty good.
Well, we're another day closer to spring, whenever that is, like March or something. So that's good. So
it's hard. At least it's hard for me to I think as you get older, days go quicker. But we're already down to January 23rd.
Yeah. Maybe one more. If we can avoid another polar vortex, we'll be all right.
Oh,
but,
yes.
Amazing what they're getting in the southern part of the United States with all the 8 to 10 inches of snow, even as far south as Florida.
Yeah.
That's something's up with that.
I guess that's just called good sharing.
Yeah. Equal opportunity there.
Absolutely.
For the weather there. Yeah. I have a lot to talk about today, and one of the things from Monday night's, it was actually a work session prior to the regular council meeting. You had your session regarding the review of kind of getting an explanation out there about the interrelationship between Beatrice Area Solid Waste Agency and Midwest Area Refuse Solutions, and kind of go over that. You have some new members on the body, and did that basically accomplish what you set out for it to do, you think?
Well, I think so. I mean, again, it wasn't exactly the warmest evening, so we didn't have a lot of attendance there. But what I think it really did, and if you go back and look at the video, I think that probably Amanda has posted, it kind of explained the difference between the area waste agency and Mars, because a lot of times people will say those are the same entity, and they're not. And I think this was on the heels of us breaking ground for a new landfill, and it started, I think, which Tobias did a great job of talking about the history of the Boswa, as we call it, and kind of share with that is a partnership between Gage County and the city of Beatrice. And the relationship that Mars has with Boswell is Mars is actually a customer. I guess that's, for lack of a better term, that's what they are, along with other people. And then what that relationship is of trash or garbage that feeds the landfill, how that will ultimately, number one, pay off the bond, and number two, how that strengthens how Boswell makes their money. And so, the more tonnage that goes into the landfill on a yearly basis, it means that we can operate that landfill at less cost to each customer if you spread that out over more customers. And so that was kind of the whole purpose, was to kind of make sure we separate what the two are, but understand that there's a relationship there, and there's a relationship with other communities that bring trash to our landfill. For instance, like Seneca. I think Tobias did a great job of sharing what that did to our cost when we started bringing in that community as well.
I was, as I was sitting there listening to it, I was trying to think or estimate, and I can't come up with a figure, but back when the old landfill was in the north part of the city and before you got to this new...
Sure.
Had the city been instead in a transfer station, or type like that, where might you be today in terms of garbage rates if you stuck with that model rather than going ahead and building a landfill and now building another one to replace the other landfill?
I think you would see a significant increase in price. I think as you look at landfills across the state of Nebraska, and even in this region, there's not a lot of landfills. And so the people that own the landfills, like I think there's a big landfill up by Milford. I think it's owned by Waste Management. Since they own it, they know that they've kind of got a little monopoly in that area, because they have a number of people that have transfer stations that haul to that landfill, because it's one of the only, there's only 13 places in the state of Nebraska where you can go. So with the transfer station, you're really not able to protect yourself or chart your own destiny. With that transfer station, you're really at the mercy of increases from, the trucking company, the landfill company, and even the maintenance of the transfer station and the compactors there. So I think in the long run, for the next 70 years, this will be a much better economic situation for our patrons.
back when sanitary garbage had the contract with the city, and then they were no longer going to be in business, and then you took bids to kind of get an idea where you would be at,
Right.
and then ultimately landed with Mars instead. There's been this ongoing among some council members and maybe others in the community about they don't like the fact that they see you competing with private business. But back then, at the time, I don't recall what the bid numbers were, but comparatively, had you gone the private route, would you be paying much more?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, one of two things. It either would have been not as reliable as what you have with Mars. I mean, one of the significant things that we just have to recognize, and we did right away, is that the equipment we would have gotten from sanitation garbage, the trucks and those type of things, really were on their last leg. Number two, you didn't have the innovation or the technology now that we have today with all the totes and the trucks that can just dump them. So that's really a game changer as well. And then thirdly, from our rates and from the bids, we were really hoping that we could have someone else do it. But after we put a pencil to it and brought in a consultant, we understood that we could provide that service just like we could with the electricity and water and sanitation at a rate that would save significant dollars to our constituents.
I was interested in the rate comparison with other communities. You weren't the far lowest, but I think it ranged anywhere from about $17 a month up to more than $50 a month.
Correct.
Of the ones that city administration had checked. So the $20 that residents are paying right now, we're in pretty good shape in that regard.
We are. And, the one thing that we have to, and we kind of, one of the reasons we focused in on this topic for a work session was to also understand that rate. Because with the landfill, there is a rate. Part of that $20 includes a fee to Boswell. And so if our landfill goes up, up in, some cost, and it will because you get the $13 million bond, that will increase your garbage bill, but it's not because of Mars, it's because of Boswell. If I remember correctly, with sanitation garbage, what you saw in your bills were typically one year you might go up a quarter, and that was a Boswell charge that increased that. Another time you might go up another quarter, and that was for sanitation garbage. So in that $20, it's all inclusive of Mars and Boswell.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's kind of complicated when you think about it.
It was
that
combined
way.
into one bill. You didn't have the
So
separation of that.
that's right. So that's all you see on your bill. And so, that's one of another reason we did the work session to kind of understand that, with anything and everything, there are always going to be increases. We wish there'd be decreases, but, I think I got notice from Verizon, since I'm on one of their lower plans, that they're going to raise us $15 a month.
There you go.
That's a pretty good big jump, at least in my budget. But this way, I think we provide a great service. Typically we don't get a lot of people who reach out and say, "Hey, you guys are doing a great job," and all of our employees do a great job. But I will say, from time to time, the one area that I get probably more compliments on people are our drivers of the single drivers of those trucks, where they stop and pick up a trash can that blew over. Sometimes
maybe it wasn't placed in the right spot or something like that.
Yeah, or maybe when they set it down, it didn't quite set. They stop, they pick it up, and they've just done a really good job since we've taken over.
One more thing on that thing about private versus public operating things. Occasionally you'll get somebody out there that is in maybe a related business will say, well, I could do it for cheaper than that. But then you look at the regulations you have to abide by environmentally at the state and federal levels.
Right.
Good luck with that if you think you can do it for a lot less.
That's true. And it goes back down. I mean, if you have only a few garbage trucks and one does break down, because they all break down, and you don't have a backup, what do you do when that garbage starts backing up because you can't provide that service? I mean, garbage is one of those services that if your garbage picked up on Wednesday, you depend on that because Otherwise, you've got 2 weeks of garbage.
Yeah.
And I can remember in days when I was younger and I'd missed a day, didn't get my can out in time, and I'm going, oh goodness, what do I do now?
Now it's going to pile up in the garage. Huh?
Yeah, now it piles up. But so that's the other thing is not only is it one of those things that you think about from a cost perspective, but also from a reliance perspective, because we do rely on getting rid of our garbage on a weekly basis. Even when this year it happened that New Year's Day and Christmas Day was on my day. So I was glad that it was posted everywhere on our website that, okay, the next day is when I put my garbage out. So it is important that you have that built-in reliability.
Well, the new landfill construction, I understand, is underway despite all the varying weather we've had and snow to put up with. Jason Moore, the superintendent of Mars, said that they built kind of a temporary road out there now, and they're doing the initial earthwork for the first cell of the.
Yeah.
So it's underway.
It'll be interesting, and like you talked about the old dump, which that was pre-me, but
pre-me too. I think we maybe caught the last few years of that, but
and that was just a place where they dumped garbage. There was no liner, there was no leachy containment. It was just there.
Yeah,
and then.
Times have changed a little bit.
Times have changed
how people
now.
handle solid waste.
That's right.
So, yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it's built. I'd like to probably see the line as they put the liner in. I kind of want to see how that liner looks like, and how do you put that large of vinyl or whatever it is that they put down.
Jason, long ago when you were doing that piggyback version thing of it, he gave me kind of a ride in his pickup up to the landfill in there because I kind of wanted to get an idea what the whole thing looked like. And they were at that point where they were doing the liner thing and everything. And it's not just like... that convinced me it's not just like getting a few bulldozers and digging a hole and then throwing the stuff in and covering it up. That's not the way it works.
That's right.
Anymore. So back with more with Mayor Bob Morgan in just a moment on Ask the Mayor. With Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan, one of the other things from the work session, and just touch on it briefly here Monday night, was kind of a shuffling the deck chairs on committees and maybe adding a part-time committee here or there on some things. That was basically what kind of matching up people's interests or their talents and things like that for the most part.
Interests and talents, both. Yeah. I think, putting people where we visualize their strengths are or interest. I mean, changed or didn't really change. Added a little bit in the downtown revitalization to, Dana, who's had a vested interest in downtown for a long time, and Mike McLean, who has a vested interest in downtown to work with Terry as we progress with the Raise or CAST initiative. So it's kind of matching up strengths and interests.
Dempster committee. Essentially, I guess you do have a new member on that. Alex is on that.
Right, Alex is on there.
And Dwayne's on that one, too.
Yep.
And then one of the new ones, well, not new ones, but it's an issue that you'll be facing at some point, is the water park.
Correct.
It's 25 years old. Hard to believe.
It's 25 years old. Still works, though, and it's something that's not going to happen tomorrow. But we do know that when you get a water park with a 20-year life expectancy to 25, you know that over the next 5 years there's going to be some repairs, some maintenance, and those type of things. And so this is, again, a way to plan for the future. And so I think that committee has 4 on it, if I remember right. And one of them, Ted, who's been on our council for a while, I think was on the study and the plans to develop the water park we have now. And so we have some people that, at least one person who has some history of what was done, and the rest of the councilmen can work on, what a new water park would look like.
Other committees and a couple of temporary ones, it's called the duck pond. It's more like a retention pond today, I guess, is the formal name for it, maybe. But what to do with that? It's been kind of... The idea was probably pretty good. It's kind of turned into something that maybe more of a mosquito pit at times.
It's the pond at Chautauqua.
Yep.
And, I think... Originally, it had water that flowed in it on a regular basis, and then there was some development that changed the water flow, and so it no longer got fed. And so we have, I think that's been a special interest of 2 or 3 council members to figure out what exactly we do to make it's just another improvement that we need to do to Chautauqua Park, whatever it is. If it's getting rid of it, if it's figuring it out, but times change. You have a development, so the runoff water no longer goes through and feeds it. You've got to figure out what to do with it.
Two other committees, new ones you named, the one on the school sites, Paddock Lane, Lincoln, right, and the other one on U.S. Highway 77.
Correct. I mean, we understand from the Nebraska Department of Roads that, or Transportation, we know that, I guess 77 is slated to get resurfaced and redesigned in 2028. And so this committee will work with the Safe Streets for All plan. We'll work with, James and Jason and with the state to develop what 77 is going to look like.
On school sites, Monday night, the council approved the plan that Hoppy is going to use for the former Stoddard school property, switching that from school use into senior housing. They have the northern half of that property right now, but that, the news of that story, that got quite a bit of reaction, largely positive. There's always a few that, whatever you do, well,
Right, but, yeah. No.
But
yeah, as I say, we all have our own opinions.
There's one of the comments, and take it if it's good or bad, positive or negative, but people wondered a little bit about how it fits into the neighborhood there. You go from, a brick building that looks like an old elementary school to a more modern, separate entry senior housing project. How do you see that?
Well, I think it's going to fit in very nicely. I think it's going to really, be attractive. I've seen at least photographs of some of the work that Hoppy has done in other communities. When we met with them, if I'm not mistaken, the building will have a little bit of a transformation because I think each apartment will have its own exterior entry, and so that's going to change the complexion. And I think, it's really a very strong location for that particular project, which is a low income / market rate project that Hoppy's put together.
And housing is a concern for every community, having available space.
One of the things that I know that I hear all the time, and even when I ran for mayor, and I heard it this time when we had council members running, is we'd like to see Beatrice grow. I think it's been at about 12,500 for a very long time. I believe that's a good place. I mean, 12,500 is a great place to maintain that, but I think there is some ways to grow. But to grow, you are going to have more housing, and if you don't have more housing, you can't have that opportunity to grow. So, I think it's a great opportunity. Hoppy seems to be like a really, really good developer, and I'm glad that we're partnering with them not only on that, but the Kensington. And I think that it's just going to bring another asset to the city.
The other thing about a senior housing project like this, maybe we don't think of as much often, but as a senior couple, say, scales down a little bit, doesn't want the maintenance things like that, that also opens up existing housing in an area.
It does. Yeah. It does. Or, it moves some people in where, gosh, they can have a nice apartment in Beatrice for a whole lot less than you can have a nice apartment in Lincoln. There's a difference in rental prices.
And you're closer to grocery stores, services, whatever the case may be.
You are. Traffic is a little easier to manage.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Back to wrap up, Ask the Mayor with Mayor Bob Morgan in just a moment. We're back today to conclude Ask the Mayor with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. A couple of things to touch on just a bit today, and progress on the Southeast Nebraska Development District administered housing rehabilitation grant, which has been kind of a neat little project, maybe a little less visible to people because it's more of a rehab type thing, but it's letting some people make some improvements for fairly low cost.
It really does. It's a grant that's run through SEND. It is for rehabbing or repairing houses that are in, I think it's the $250,000 range and under. Could be wrong. Could be a little higher than that. It's one of those that's kind of interesting because it caps at $24,999 worth of repairs. So you'll see a lot of, when those come to the city council, you see two things. Number one, you see that it's the rehab rehabilitation grant, number two, you see the price, and usually they're right around that $24 to $24,999.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're doing work that's more than that, but at least the grant helps cover that cost. But the other thing about this grant is SEND is the only one who knows who gets that grant, because it is done, confidentiality, and even the council members and the mayor, we don't know that either. It's a committee from SEND. But I think it's interesting because as you drive through, you see, and I've seen this across the city in the last couple of years, you can see where places, new siding has gone on and new roofing has gone on, and they've maybe redid some of the exteriors. And I think they've dressed up a number of homes now that I drive through and I see some, and I wonder to myself, was that one of them?
Yeah.
Because it really has helped bring our housing stock up and beautify the community. So we're very thankful for SEND.
Is part of that reason for the confidentiality, so it's not, and maybe it's just a federal regulation or something, but is it partly to make sure you're not concentrating all the improvements and maybe into neighborhoods of a certain age or type or condition or whatever, that you're kind of opening it up to everybody if they can make use of it?
I think that's part of it, and I think that's way that that it's a very fair and open process.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
If I remember right, they had 19 eligible properties. They had, I think, completed 6, but they're working on probably 18 that will be done, or somewhere
18
in there.
or 19,
Trying to
yes.
remember the numbers.
Yes.
But do you foresee that program maybe going another round, or is that potential for another grant in that regard? Or
I think it was a question that was asked, and they weren't sure. They know that the funds may or may not be there for in the future, but right now I think they've done a nice job with those 19. I think they were trying to get to 18, and I think they're going to end up being able to fund 19, if I remember right.
Okay. Beatrice Police Director Jay Murphy, now Interim Police Chief. People may wonder first why he was director in the first place, not chief. And they may wonder, well, now he's been here, why interim chief? And what does that lead to? There must be some process here.
There is process in place. When our chief of police left, I will say that Jay stepped up and did has done a really nice job of being a leader for the Beatrice Police Department, and has championed not only the community as strongly as he always has, but also championed and has really worked well with all the officers and the dispatchers, and has really kind of brought them all together as a good group. But when you have one leave on as short a term as that one is, you want to make sure that the structure you put in place is one that you're going to hopefully see exactly what Jay had done, and that's really have strong leadership and pull all the department together the way he did. The chief of police is a civil service position, and the director of police was not. And so, I think as Jay has found out that there's a little confusion when you go to different meetings, well, what's a director? Because chief is what you really want. But there is a process through the civil service that we need Jay to go through. We have the ability to appoint him as an interim while he goes through that process. And then once he gets through that process, with an interview from the Civil Service Commission, he'll be able to be full-time appointed as the Beatrice Police Chief.
With that, though, don't you have to open it up to other applicants as well?
We do.
Yeah.
We do. I mean, that's probably the scariest part if you're, Officer, Murphy, Chief Murphy. But, I think you also have to look at experience, and I think that I think it's the right way to go. I think Chief Murphy definitely he's earned that title. He needs that title, and I think he's done a nice job. So, could somebody else come in with more experience? Maybe, but it's hard to overcome the experience that we see.
As far as when the interviews, the testing is done of candidates, like 4 or 5 months down the road or whenever that starts taking place, the recommendation comes to the city council, which votes on it. But do you does just the commission make that recommendation, or do you have a say in that in terms of looking over the candidates and saying, hey, we think this is the person you should choose?
Don't quote me. I'm trying to remember the process. But I do believe, first of all, there's the testing piece, and then it goes to the Civil Service Commission, and then they recommend 1, 2, 3, whatever candidates is to continue to move forward. And then there may be an interview with city administration and myself, I'm not sure, and then it will come to the council.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Well, how do you, any time frame you hope to have the entire thing settled and you have a new police chief? Full-time?
I would hope that by May or June we'll be in that position. Yeah.
Yeah. Then somebody can take the title on. You don't have to deal with it for a while. So. Yeah. Well, and the thing is, with Jay and his prior service too, seems like the continuity of familiarity with department personnel and procedures and how the department operates is kind of a plus, I would say.
It's a very strong plus.
Yeah.
It is. I just again, like you've pointed out, there will be other applicants, which is fair and the right way to do it. It's just so hard to look past the experience that he's bringing for 30 years and the continuity that he brought back into the department that was gone.
Okay. Mayor, thanks again for being with us.
Thank you.